We are live. It's like look at the thing. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Big Guy Fantasy Sports Consistency Show. We have the Holy Trinity with us this week. We are going to break down the running backs from a consistency perspective for 2025. That's Ron Riggney. That's James Knight. I'm Bob Lug. We're coming up next. All right, Holy Trinity is here. We got everybody together. Everybody's healthy, thank goodness. James, you were struggling last week, and it's been going around. I get it. I call my daughter's kids, all that stuff, grandkids, all been sick. So, welcome back. Ron and I talked for an hour last week, so we're going to try to keep it under that, but you never know. Hey, good information is good information, right? We got to do what we got to do. So, Ron, how's things going with you? You got your championship Kings Classic shirt on.
Yeah, I had to bust this one out. Last year was kind of a forgettable year. Made the final again in 2024, but 2023 was when I was able to finally take one home. So I got to bust this one out as much as I can, despite it being Chargers colors. Still got to wear it. Still means a lot to me. I'll probably wear this one until it just falls off of myself.
And where's the bell? See, the bell should be hanging over your shoulder.
I don't want to rub it in too much. I don't want to brag, but we might bring it out in the finale, the tight end show, because that show will probably be about maybe 10 minutes long as opposed to the hour that we talk about quarterbacks. So I'll bring it out.
Trey McBride and everybody else sucks.
Yeah, it's not going to be a tough one to go through. So
All right, James, welcome back. How you been, man? Good to see you healthy again.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It's good to be back. I missed you guys. Like I said, I watched the video. A lot of good stuff last week from you guys. Yeah, but happy to be back, and I will. Maybe I'll go get that. I did get my Reddit versus the World trophy.
Congratulations! So what was that? I kept wanting to ask you. So explain what that was. What the competition was. You won it, but tell people what it was about, because I didn't even know.
So what they did was they gathered 18 of us together, 9 what they considered primetime analysts, and wanted to do that, and then they picked 9 people who were the most contributions on the side of Reddit. Like, we go in there and discuss stuff. So I'm one of those people apparently that contributes. So I got invited to be a Redditor against the world. Nice. And and it went into the Guillotine League, and every week people just kept getting chopped and doing that. And I did the wild thing of, like, week 4, just absolutely blowing all my budget, and then just basically throwing in 1,000 waivers every week and getting somebody, whoever was left over. Yeah. And at the end of the day, against Drew Davenport and the most stacked team I've ever seen in my life in the championship game, which I was projected to lose by like 60. I ended up beating him with Bijan Robinson going off, and Kyle Pitts the week before doing that, surviving me both weeks. It was crazy. Guys that I picked up off the waiver wire, that, like I said, he didn't pick them up because his team was so stacked. I ended up getting, like I said, I played Brock Purdy in the final week. I started him, which is crazy. I should have never done that, but I was like, you know what? I need a prayer. I need some stuff to happen. Yeah. And then it worked out.
Did he throw 4 touchdowns, 5 touchdowns?
Yeah. He was right up there with QB. I think it was him or Lawrence, one of the two were right there, QB1 that week. Mm-hmm. And I needed every single point. And that league, like I said, because it had gotten down to that last 2 teams, I also picked up a Monroe St. Brown off of waivers and played him in a wide receiver spot. So I was like, I'll take it.
Yeah, I have to play in one of those sometimes. I have always thought about it, and I just always kind of forget. Maybe I'll do that next year.
I mean, yeah, when you look down his team, though, he legitimately said that. He's like, who would I have taken out for any of those guys, though? Like it was that stacked. And I was just, I had already given up the idea that I was going to win. And when Bijan Robinson and Purdy had that game, I was like, okay, there's a chance I'm going to win this.
Good for you. Way to go, man.
Thank you.
Beats the world. And Drew Davenport at that, which is even more impressive. Drew won his 3rd auction league title. And I keep forgetting to calculate it, but I'm pretty sure Drew will move up. I think he will be the high guy to move up into the big league. And I think Bob Harris is coming down, but we'll see. Mm-hmm. We'll fully calculate that later. But all right, so let's talk about the running back. So I asked you guys that we're going to present 3 players that we just felt very good at the end of the year. We feel good about maybe going into next year. And we each made sure we didn't conflict, kind of, sort of, with each other's picks, even though there was a little struggle there. But and then we're going to talk about 3 guys that I think were a letdown in some fashion, or just some stats that may surprise you about some of these players. So, James, you're our newbie back this week.
There it is.
So why don't you start with one of your favorites? I think I know who you're going to pick, but I'll let you do it anyway.
If you've watched it, if you've read the article, it's James Cook. It's got to be James Cook. And, since he came in the league, I've been on him, and I knew he was a great player, and he just keeps getting faded. This year, his ADP ended up pushing him down to around 30 in most leagues. So, you're talking about he was going in the middle of the third round. For the guy who finished the season as the NFL rushing leader, he had 12 rushing touchdowns, so he was tied for fifth in running backs with touchdowns. On top of that, he was tied for sixth in clutch rate at 81% this year. That's pretty good. Putting him up there. A crazy thing about James Cook, though, that still drives me up the wall. He only had 2 games this entire season where he had over a 75% snap percentage. Most of his games were in the 40s and 50s. Not a single running back ahead of him was almost all their games are 80s and 90%. So you're talking about the game he ran for 200 yards against Carolina, he had a 44% snap percentage.
Because they took him out at halftime.
Yeah. You know what I mean? All of his games are like that. And so, I look at him and I remember when he was first coming in the first year or two when people called him a satellite back. And they're like, he's never going to score touchdowns, not with Josh Allen and do all that. Then he went and led the NFL in touchdowns. And they were like, oh, that was fluky. It's because he can't run between the tackles and run. Well, then he led the league in rushing yards. So if he gets 70, 80% snap next year, we're looking at a guy that's guaranteed top 5 running back again. And the Bills seem to have absolutely no interest in putting any other weapons around Josh Allen. So he's going to be the Scottie Pippen to Josh's Michael Jordan, and I see that coming again next year.
Yeah, no, he was definitely one. He was one of the guys that I liked, and then he had the hold in, and I'm like, oh, they're talking about him. Oh, I'm not sure. Oh, they may play Ray Davis more, and I bailed. And I shouldn't have. So good for you for sticking to the script and going with him. Definitely a good call there. And I've already seen some way too early mock drafts and stuff. And I think he's late second round still. I'm like, okay. Yeah, he's definitely not first round, not even close to first round. And I'm like, oh, okay. So anyway, good stuff there. Ron, who do you got as one of your favorites? I think I know too, but because you're wearing its hat.
So it's surprise. Had to go Homer with my guy, Jonathan Taylor. And I'm going to post it with an asterisk, though, because as much as that season was so exciting when we were 8-2, and then it sucked when we finished 8-9. And so got to cling to whatever I can here. Yeah. But Jonathan Taylor, the leagues that I kept afloat in, the leagues that I challenged in, the leagues that I got to the playoffs and the finals in, it was all because one of the main reasons was Jonathan Taylor. And again, he led the league in touchdowns, led the league in carries, so the work is there. Like him going into next year just because we don't know what we're doing at quarterback. We've got some questions at wide receiver with a couple guys up for contracts. Mm-hmm. So they're going to have to give him the ball. Offensive line is at least going to go into the year healthy. Pro Football Focus ranked that offensive line as the second best in the league behind Denver when healthy. And that's what they are. They are just dogs up front. They can push, they can pass block. That was one of the reasons that you saw Daniel Jones have success. And then all of a sudden it kind of starts to fall apart with that offensive line, kind of like we talked about with Justin Herbert last week and that Chargers offensive line that was Swiss cheese for the whole year. So one of the things, though, that I want to post, as much as I do like him and as much as we look at this season and the consistency was there, I believe he was 14-17, one of our more consistent options. Little misleading, though, and it made me think of one of our favorite guys to talk about as the antithesis of consistency, Mr. Jay Ajayi, if you remember that name. He had that big season, and he had all the big rushing season, and he had the big touchdown season, and it came in like 6 games. Jonathan Taylor kind of had some of that. So when you look down his stat line, the carries were there, 20, 22, 25, many weeks, but the problem was 787 of those 1,520 yards and 9 of those 20 total touchdowns were in just 5 games. Not so good. So again, he did enough with the touchdowns and the consistency. The consistency was there. Yeah. And for where you got him from, I don't know that you were drafting you might have got him in the first round. I think he was more of like a second round guy last
More
year,
late,
if I remember
first
correct.
or the second, depends on the
Yeah.
league.
So again, I mean, you got, I guess, first round production, but again, I mean, he's a guy that you got to like going into the season next year because of all the question marks, but he's a workhorse year after year, stayed healthy this season, got nicked up a little bit, but still was in the lineup, but really fell off kind of when the whole wheels started to fall off the Colts, but gave you 80 yards and a touchdown, still gave you some production, but it was, it was hard to live up to that 244-yard, 3-touchdown outburst that we had that I think was the second highest fantasy game of the season. So again, like Jonathan Taylor, not just because I'm a homer, but that work's going to be there heading into 2026.
Yeah, no question about it. I mean, fourth in total points, tied for fourth in consistency at 82%. And like you said, and that's with his quarterback falling apart, then having to be replaced. So a lot of, abnormalities certainly happening with that offense. They get it back in line, whether it's Daniel Jones or whoever, that team's going to run. They've got, like you said, one of the best offensive lines. So certainly, it'll be one of those. Where will he go? I think he still goes late first round, early second. I just feel like, just like they had no love for Daniel Jones running an offense, and Taylor's not going to do anything. We still have the same problem. It's still Daniel Jones, if and when he's going to be back healthy, and who's going to be the backup, who's going to fill in early. But regardless, it's still a very good offense and still a very good offensive line for
him. And real quick too, when you're drafting, there's not too many of those. We don't use that term bell cow running back anymore, but he's about as close as you're going to get. And the one thing I want to add too, and then I'm done talking about my guy, is had 46 catches as well. So you total that together, he had about 365, 370 touches. Not a lot of guys in the league getting that many.
Right. But it's always the 370, but that's 370 carries, I think. So it doesn't count. All right, good stuff there. So I'm going to talk about a guy who was one of the players who tied with Jonathan Taylor at 82%. I had him in a few leagues. Probably didn't draft as many as I probably should have, because again, I thought, oh well, maybe he's seen his better days, but he hasn't, and that's Chase Brown. Let's throw out week 1 through 6, because that team was a mess, and Burrow then got hurt, or it was a messy time. Because he only went 3, he basically was 50% consistent. After week 6, week 7 through 18, 100% perfect in consistency. Ended up through those games, he was 4th in total points behind the big boys. McCaffrey, Bijan, Taylor, those guys. Probably Gibbs too. So again, you look at this and go, okay, so here we're going to go into 2026. We assume Joe Burrow can stay healthy. We assume that the offense continues to roll. Yes, they need a better offensive line to keep Joe Burrow healthy, but they seem to be blocking well, and Chase Brown catches a lot of balls out of the backfield. So he's a guy that will be on my radar, especially if we do, I see him going second round, maybe third round. Just again, depends on the respect. He really doesn't seem to get it most of the time. He's usually that second, third round back. Everybody's like, oh, well, I guess I'll take Chase Brown. But he's proven now back-to-back years that he can be a very consistent running back, and it can be a very good value. He played all 17 games, which is, again, things that we don't see a lot of. So that's what I'm going to go with is Chase Brown, 8th in total points. Just who you want him to be. I mean, you'd rather he would be your RB2 if you can get like Bijan or somebody like that early first, then come back with Chase Brown. That's even better. But but then you also kind of give up some good wide receivers too. So we'll see. All right. So any more thoughts on those three between the three of us? If not, we'll move on to our next spot.
No,
good.
Like
all right. Okay. So let's go with our second one. And Ron, we'll start with you. Who's second on your list as one of your favorites this past year for you?
It's a guy that, he's kind of anytime I get to say his nickname, I got to bring it up, and that's Zach Charbonnet, the champagne of running backs.
Yes.
Again, Ken Walker's a free agent. We don't know where he's going to go. We don't know if he's going to get re-signed. The more you saw Charbonnet get the ball, and we saw it even in the previous season when Walker is out, which he has a tendency to be nicked up a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Charbonnet steps in, and he's probably was the best backup running back, or best handcuff, I guess you could say, that you had in the league. And we saw it again this year. Finished 24th in total points without consistent carries, was 56% consistent, ended up finishing the season with 3 clutch games. When you look at what he did towards the end there, in those last 2 games, got 17 and 18 carries from scrimmage, scored a touchdown the last game, had 110 yards and 2 touchdowns against a tough Carolina defense in week 17. So he catches the ball well out of the backfield. He's more of kind of the third down guy, but he's kind of showing he can be that kind of complete guy. And again, I like him even if they bring Ken Walker back, but if they don't, really like Zach Charbonnet heading into next season. There's really not a whole lot more you can say about him. Again, that offense rolled. It was nice to see Sam Darnold do what he did, JSN taking that step, and not a whole lot behind JSN in the passing game, but you saw where they utilize those 2 running backs down the stretch, and they'll continue to do that in the playoffs. But a guy that's not got a lot of a lot of miles on the tires, still fairly young, 6'1", 214, nice size, nice speed, nice shiftiness. Like him a lot going into next season. And I liked him a lot.
Good receiving back as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Good stuff. Yeah, no, I had him couple Kings Classic leagues. Like you said, the tough part is we were just kind of second guessing, but near that end of the year, he certainly kind of pulled people through, especially the playoffs, fantasy playoffs. That was definite. So, all right, James, who's your number 2 guy?
Yeah, my number 2 guy is Travis Etienne, and it's for value for him. I've kind of always believed in him. A couple years back, he had a good year. He's got some track record, but man, that Jaguars team, they just fell off a cliff until this year. They bring in Liam Cohen. Mm-hmm. We expected some things. I think the biggest draw to him, or knock on him, I guess, early on, was was he going to get replaced by Bigsby? Was he going to get replaced by Tootin? Somebody like that. Who was going to be the lead carrier in Jacksonville? But looking into it, I mean, Travis Etienne is buddies with, Trevor Lawrence. They go back to college together, do certain things. Like I said, we've already seen his track record to do stuff. He was getting picked in the middle of the 7th round going into drafts this year for PPR. However, he finished as a top RB1 at RB12, 71% consistent rate. Mm-hmm. And that puts him ahead of Saquon Barkley, Bucky Irvin, Ashton Janty. You name a list of names. That 71 doesn't sound great, but when you see all the players who got drafted before him, that value in the 7th round was crazy.
Yeah.
A crazy stat was they went into their bye on week 8. After that, he had 1 game less than 11 points. Every other game was over 11 points. It got even better when they decided to go out and get Jacoby Myers. They went and got Jacoby Myers, and all of a sudden the Jaguars looked like they were legit, scoring tons of points on everybody. They dropped 30+ on Denver like it was playing against a middle school team. And that killed me. But weeks 14 through 17, your money weeks, if you played Etienne and you had him, he averaged over 20 PPR points per game during those money weeks. And this is a guy that, we weren't even sure if he was going to keep a job, or some people weren't. Some people were edging against him completely. So getting him in the 7th, if you got him, you may have even got him as an RB3 at that point. And if you had that and you were flexing him, you were probably doing pretty well. In most of the leagues I had him, I did extremely well in this year.
Yeah. If you had James Cook and Travis, boy, you were rolling.
Yeah,
that's for sure. All right.
I think I have James draft all my teams next year. He's my guy.
That's it. Yeah, I might. Yeah, just have him sit in for me in the Kings Classic, and he can just represent big guy.
I'm gonna get him a fake beard and a Colts hat. Nobody will know the difference.
Nobody will know.
You
might have him work out a little bit though. I don't think he's gonna have those same arms. He won't be able to wear a medium like you do. Got to sit there and rival Coventry. All right. So sticking with my theme here so far of 82% consistency, I feel like Kyren Williams just gets no love. And here he is, 9th in total points, right behind Chase Brown, 82% consistent, tied with Jonathan Taylor. Every week Blake Corum was going to take over. And then there was the talk about resting him. And I felt like they didn't listen to a word that McVay said, because all he said was, we're going to rest him for the stretch run. And guess what? In that stretch run, Kyren Williams from week 9 to week 18 was 89% consistent. It was 9th in total points out of all running backs. But he was being rested during that time frame so that he would be ready for the playoffs. Now, did Blake Corum have some decent? Yeah, I mean, he had 47 yards rushing, I think, last week. In fact, I won the over on that. If you read the prop bets, I was all over that one. But Kyren still does his job, did it well, was consistent, and I guarantee you he will be late second, third round pick because people just like, oh, this is the year Blake Corum's taken over. It's like, it's like they paid him big money to stay for 3 years. So I don't know why people just don't give this guy love. He just goes out and grinds. Really, like I said, I never understand. But so don't be surprised if you see me with a lot of teams next year with Chase Brown and Kyren Williams on them, because I just feel like they're just such good values sitting out there and have proven themselves year after year. So any thoughts on Kyren? Do you guys feel differently? Is Blake Corum? I don't see either.
You can't. Corum's got talent and does everything there, but he's got talent as an RB2 behind Williams. Williams grinds, like you said, does everything McVay asks him to do and does it pretty well. So the idea that they would go away from him was crazy. I remember, I think it was last year, they made him a kick returner at the beginning of the year. Let him kick return. Do you remember that? And everybody faded him then too, and was like,
yeah, because they're like, oh, yeah, they must be benching him.
Yeah, they're not going to use him after he returns a kick, and I'm like, or they're just trust him so much that McVay's like, I wonder how many more times we can get him the ball.
Yeah. What was I going to say? The only fear is that Stafford gets hurt. And I don't know who their backup is. So
Jimmy G.
As I say, I thought it was Jimmy G, but
because I remember the memes at the beginning of the year that was like Devontae Adams said that he would never play with Jimmy G against all the hospital balls, and then Stafford wasn't going to play, and then Devontae Adams is like, no, this isn't happening to me.
This is not happening. Yeah, and then miraculously Stafford plays all year like he's a god. So he is. All right, so let's go to our third one. So James, we'll go to you. Who's your third positive running back you've had for this year or feel positive about?
And this is a guy that I grabbed and drafted in dynasty leagues, but I did get him in redraft late in a lot of different places or where I could, was RJ Harvey from the Denver Broncos. And, early on we saw J.K. Dobbins get the lion's share of the carries there in certain things. But, you kind of bet that hedge that bet, I guess, when you go get Harvey, because Dobbins hasn't really had any healthy seasons in the NFL. And in a Sean Payton offense, a running back who can catch passes and do certain things with a high IQ like Harvey, you kind of feel like he might be able to be that Alvin Kamara type. He ended up with a 47% consistency rate, which wasn't great, but he finished 5 in a row from weeks 13 through 17, again, money weeks. During that time period, if you were playing him in flexes and doing that stuff, or if you had him, he averaged over 19 points per game during that stretch, and he clocked in overall RB24 in points per game at 12.2, despite the limited playing at the very beginning of the year. And we saw a lot of that towards the end of the year where I feel like Bo Nix was scrambling. They were doing a lot of things, and RJ Harvey seemed to be that guy getting loose down towards the end zone. He had he had finished with 14 total touchdowns on the year, I believe it was. And that's pretty good for a rookie running back who wasn't playing until about the second half of the year, basically behind Dobbins. So, and I can't guarantee Dobbins will be back next year. And if he is, we don't know how healthy he'll be. Right. And I can't see the Broncos spending any kind of capital or money at the running back position. So it's probably going to be a lot of heavy doses of RJ Harvey next year. And if Nix takes another step forward and they keep doing that, he could be in an explosive offense and easily provide you double-digit touchdowns, get you an RB1 season.
Yeah, well, and Ron, you mentioned earlier that, the Colts were the number 2 offensive line ranked and number 1 was Denver. So, obviously, definitely came on the end of the year. I'm sure he will be highly drafted first, second, third. Well, I mean, not first, but definitely second, third round heading into the season for sure. So, Ron, who you got as your number 3 favorite?
I got a guy that just got himself a new head coach in the last 24 hours.
Ah,
That's
that guy.
Mr. Cam Scataboe. Yes, sir. And it's, he took over as the guy last year, and it was everything as advertised, man. Just a fun guy to watch, hard nosed, was everything running the ball that you thought he was going to be. 6 for 8 as far as clutch games, catches the ball a little bit better than I think people give him credit for. But again, coming off the injury, think he's going to be fine. We see the rehab with these injuries, with the ACLs or with the ankles or whatever it is, and they can work wonders and they can get these guys back. Now, are they going to be a little bit cautious with him heading into camp? Of course they are.
Right.
But you've got a guy that's behind a decent offensive line, but John Harbaugh seems like the coach for Cam Scataboe. Again, he's a Harbaugh, so he wants to run the ball and play defense. He's got a guy he can do that with. I'm not sure what the contract status is with Devon Singletary or Tyrone Tracy. They might factor in to catch the ball a little bit, but they are not going to take Cam Scataboe out of this RB1 spot. So when he's in, it's his job. But it just seems like a match made in heaven, John Harbaugh and Cam Scataboe. I had him on my list anyway. Like him even more now.
Yeah. No, he was so much fun. And, yeah, it was a shame when he got hurt. Let's hope that he gets back to health. But he's also a wrecking ball, so he kind of also scares me that the way he throws his body around, the way he's the new Mike Allstott per se, that that's where injuries come from when you try to run over everybody, But yeah, he definitely was great when he played. So I'm going to talk about a guy that, amazingly enough, at the end of the year, I did an article for my friend John Lobb, put it on whatever site he was on, I forget, Fantasy Alarm, for ranking the top 3 at each position, MVPs, and that kind of stuff. And the amazing thing was McCaffrey, Bijan, Gibbs, all the discussions, Devon Achane never came up in any conversation. And all he did was end up the season 5th, 16 for 16, perfect 100% because he missed a game. And yeah, his team was garbage, but he put up fantasy points every week, and the man just got no love. So, folks, I'm going to give him some love because this kid is very talented. Who knows who's going to be the coach, but it's got to be better than Mike McDaniel. To come in there, get this team in shape, whether Tua is going to be gone, who knows? I mean, they paid him big money, so I assume he stays. But what they do have is this kid, and I'm hoping that messiness keeps his value down. We'll see. Still, 5th in total points, hard to argue with. But I don't know if he'll go first round or not. I guess a lot of it will depend on who the new coach is and what they do in the offseason. But he was there for whoever drafted him. Sadly, wasn't me, because I was kind of scared of that mess too, like a lot of people were. I should have drafted him instead of Barkley when I had those chances, but no, I kept drafting Barkley. But we'll get to that later. But yeah, I just really he just had a great year and was everything you need him to be week after week. You can't ask for more than 100% perfection. So definitely hope he gets a team around him to make him better, because he could easily be a number 1 in a year or two if he gets a good team around him to take that pressure off. So, all right, gentlemen, we're going to throw some hate. It's time to throw some hate. Hate to do it. Don't want to do it. But we all know who those players are that we counted on, trusted, and they let us down greatly. And so, James, we'll start with you. Who's your first player that you just weren't a big fan of by the end of the year?
Yeah, and I didn't have to reach super high for him and get him or whatever, but I expected more out of him, and it's Isiah Pacheco.
Mm-hmm.
Tied to the Kansas City Chiefs. You got Mahomes healthy. You got guys going. And all of a sudden, he's kind of fallen, not super far, but he's fallen in that middle round, 5, 6 rounds, something like that in the drafts. And I'm like, I can get this running back, especially if I stacked up heavy at wide receiver early in the draft. I'm like, I'm going to get Pacheco, and I'm going to get some good numbers out of him. And the worst part is he played 13 games. So he didn't miss like half the year, things like that. He actually played in 13 games. So you had him, maybe you felt like you needed to play him, even though that probably made you feel sick inside. 23% consistent rate on the year. He ended up tied for RB 54, averaging 6.7 points per game. He had 3 games all year over 10 points, and I'm willing to bet that if you had him, you benched him those weeks because he had been so prior. So, I mean, at the end of the day, you look at that Chiefs season. That Chiefs season is an entire disappointment from everybody, but perhaps maybe Mahomes. Statistically, he kind of bounced back this year and ran the ball and did some things, but even he got hurt in the end. Kelsey underachieved. Rashee Rice missed the first, 7 weeks of the season, was okay, and then missed the end of the season. So if you had almost any Chief that wasn't Patrick Mahomes this year, you were probably let down wherever you had to draft him at.
That's for sure. That's for sure. All right, Ron, who you got is your number one? Doesn't have to be number one. You can do this reverse, or I don't care. Just pick one. Pick one of those people that you just couldn't sleep at night during the season because they just kept letting you down.
Yeah, terrible's terrible in no particular order, and so we're going to go with the guy that we usually like here. We usually talk about him on the other side of this, and that's David Montgomery. David Montgomery. Jahmyr Gibbs was the guy. Jahmyr Gibbs had all the big games. Again, we love him. He was gotten us so far in the past, and this year 6 for 17 clutch games. Had to scroll pretty far down to find him on the list as far as clutch. And again, it's weird because when you look at his stats are not that far off from what he had last year. You compare the rushing totals. Had 775 last year, 716 this year. 8 touchdowns this year, 12 last year. So that's a little bit of a difference. Yeah. That's about a 24-point difference. But also the one thing that kind of hurt him, 12 more receptions last year, and didn't have any receiving touchdowns last year, but had a considerable amount more of receiving yards, 341 to 192. So the production just wasn't there. But when you look at his per game stats, he had, I think, 10 games where he had 35 rushing yards or less. And he had some games like just throw up some clunkers. Had, 4 for 14 against Pittsburgh, 7 for 32. He did score a touchdown, 5 for 18 against the Giants, 9 for 12 against Cleveland, like games where he just disappeared. Now, I'm not expecting, Detroit Lion, Barry Sanders type numbers out of David Montgomery, but we were expecting some touchdowns along the way. We were expecting a few more 50-yard efforts. I mean, we know that he's splitting the carries, or, it ended up being Jahmyr Gibbs, I think, getting probably more touches. But I hate to say it, but he's a guy that I got in a couple of dynasties and thinking about cutting him loose in a couple of dynasties. We're going to have to see just kind of what shakes out with that offensive coordinator job. But I'd say David Montgomery is a guy, especially in my one main money dynasty league, that let me down quite a bit this year.
Yeah, no, it pained me too. And like you said, the total points, 27th, like he was never high in total points. So he was always at 15 to 20. Mm-hmm. So, like you said, overall, outside of the touchdowns being off 4, so that's, 24 points there. And 24 points would have probably moved him up into the top 24 players. But yeah, I think the biggest thing for me was the touchdowns. It was just, Gibbs was doing multiple games or games with multiple touchdowns a lot. Whether it was both rushing, one of each, whatever the case may be, they just weren't giving Montgomery the ball down at the goal line like they used to in the past. And, maybe it was just the way things played out. Maybe they ran Montgomery twice. He couldn't get it in. So they brought Gibbs in to do a rollout and, do something with that. But yeah, that was one of my more painful ones for sure. So, all right, well, I'm going to go straight to my number one, and that is Saquon Barkley. Oh, I could put Derrick Henry in there, but he actually had a nice second half. But by then I didn't make the playoffs anyway. But Barkley, I mean, yeah, I get it. They lost some offensive linemen, new offensive coordinator, but man, it just, every time I watched him, it just didn't seem like he could get a hole. He couldn't, there was no holes to be ran through. And he just barely had any games where he just exploded like he would in the past. I mean, he had a couple games where he had a big run. I think it was later in the year where he had like a 52-yard or something, but just such a letdown, 63% consistent. I charted from week 6 to 18, he only had 6 clutch games. So I think he was it 50%? Maybe, 60%. 50% consistent during that time frame, 19th in total points. He did have a clutch game in week 14, 15, and 16, but not 17. But just a complete letdown. I mean, I was excited when I was getting him in like pick 10. Like, oh, this is awesome. And I should have picked Achane or I should have picked Chase Brown or something. But yeah, I'm sure everybody out there who had him feels the same way. But it was quite a letdown for sure. So, all right, Ron, let's go back to you for your number 2 running back issues.
So my number 2 is kind of a collection of a group of guys that just, and again, I don't know that we were expecting a whole ton out of them before the season started, just because. Well, I take that back. If injuries hadn't just decimated them, I think the guy that started as the RB1 in the Cardinals backfield might have been good, and that was James Conner. But I'm going with that whole Cardinals backfield. I took James Conner in one of the Kings Classic leagues, and he was actually, believe it or not, had the shortest season, was the most consistent at 2 for 3 as far as clutch games, 67%. Now, I'm going to go down the list here of the reasons why the Arizona Cardinals run game was so bad. Number one of the worst lines in the league. So again, I don't think we were expecting a ton, but we were expecting at least some touchdowns out of James Conner because that's what he does. Right. Okay, so we go down the list here. James Conner, 2 for 3, led in consistency. Trey Benson, guy that was injured, came in, then kind of faded back out, 1 for 4, 25%. Bam Knight, another guy that got some run, 3 for 12. Michael Carter, 3 for 13. Amari DiMaccardo, 2 for 12. So again, you just didn't have consistency from anybody on that. The only guy that was consistent was Michael Carter or Michael Wilson later in the year throughout the last 6 weeks, which is a guy that I'm sure we'll talk about next week. At least I'll foreshadow and say I'm going to talk about it next week. Okay. But that running game, couldn't get anything out of it. And it was guys that were, I felt like with the Cardinals backs on the waiver wire, I felt like I was Charlie Brown trying to kick the football from Lucy. I'm like, oh, Michael Carter's got a good matchup. I need somebody. I'm going to do it. 20 yards, 30 yards, no touchdowns, no catches. So, and again, when you look at them as a team, the only team that they ranked ahead of in rush yards per game on the regular season, they had 93.1. The only team that was worse was, believe it or not, the Oakland, Las Vegas, whatever you want to call them, Raiders with Ashton Genty. They only averaged 77. So they were second to the last, second to worst in the whole league. It can't get much worse from here, but I'm pretty sure that I'm probably going to stay away from James Conner and the entire Cardinals team if your name's not Michael Wilson heading into 2026.
I get you.
Yeah.
All right, James, who you got?
Yeah, and I'm going to go ahead and apologize to Ron for this because I know I poached him off his list too, but I imagine this guy was on a bunch of lists. Yeah. It's Alvin Kamara for me, and going into it, I wrote stuff during the summer about him, and he had never finished lower than RB16 ever in a season. He was coming into this Saints thing. They got Kellen Moore now. It was pretty much just him and Chris Olave, the only weapons in the house, and it's like, okay, worst case scenario is he doesn't want to play there. There was some trade rumors doing stuff, and then the thing came out, and he's like, you know what? If you're going to trade me away, I'm going to go sit on a beach somewhere and sip drinks. I only want to be in New Orleans. So I'm like, oh, he wants to play. He's excited about being in New Orleans. He's going to put in an effort. Didn't start off bad. Had 13.7 points week 1, 15 points week 2. You're like, okay, I can deal with that. And then it just fell off a cliff and never came back. Mm-hmm. And they didn't include him in the passing game. It plateaued out in week 9 versus the Rams when he got you negative 0.3 points. Despite the fact he had 6 carries for 14 yards and one catch on 3 targets for 3 yards. So, he's one of those guys that when you drafted him, you felt like you were going to get a value out of him. That 15-point game in week 2 was the highest he had all year. He just never, ever quite took off and never felt like he was part of the offense the way he should have been. And then I don't know if they shut him down at the end of the year or whatnot there, but it was probably a mercy kill at that point because, if you had him in fantasy, you were like, please shut him down so I can put him in my out spot or do something. Worst part about it, I drafted him in a bunch of redraft leagues thinking I got value, but I also, in several of my dynasty leagues, on what I thought were contenders, which did pretty well towards the end, but not due to him, went out and traded for Alvin Kamara because I was like, oh, he's gonna be a valuable commodity here. He'll be a valuable asset. But man, did his ceiling fall off. And kind of like Ron said, I'm going to foreshadow that too because it's the Chris Olave show there, just like it was the Michael Wilson show in Arizona down the stretch. So that's a wide receiver that just stepped up and actually had a fully healthy year. So, but Kamara, rest in peace, Kamara. you will never see the light of day on any of my teams ever again.
Yeah, probably not mine either.
Yeah. Either. So even if he's back, nope, not doing it.
Hear you. Well, I'm going to go with the team, and I just wanted to bring up these two together. Not that they were, I shouldn't say disappointing. It was definitely a unique year, but I'm going to talk about the New England backfield for a minute. So we started in preseason with, they drafted TreVeyon Henderson. Okay, good running back at Ohio State. TreVeyon Henderson, it becomes the belle of the ball in preseason, just lighting everybody up. And so basically, Ramondre Stevenson doesn't get drafted at all by most people, and TreVeyon is like top 24, like that. Like I feel like there's times where he got close to like fourth round kind of guy. And then he comes out and goes 2 for 9 in clutch games. Henderson didn't do much better. He was 3 for 9. And everybody kind of gave up. Oh, okay. They're nothing. And then week 9 hits and TreVeyon goes batshit crazy. Goes 4 straight clutch games. Ramondre goes 1 for 4. And now Henderson's the man to have. And then week 13 started. And from week 13 to week 18, Ramondre Stevenson was a perfect 5 for 5 because there was a bye week, was 8th in total points amongst all running backs during that time frame. TreVeyon Henderson goes 3 for 5 in 21st place, 21st in total points. So I'm not sure what happens in New England. Now, I don't know. I think Stevenson was signed to a long-term deal before the season started, like a 3-year, I think. So I think he's around for a couple more years, but I think Stevenson made a statement in those last 5 games. To
4-year deal.
Huh?
4-year deal. So he's going to be around for a few seasons, yeah.
So I feel like Ramondre will be a value going into next year's draft because people are going to look at TreVeyon's games. They'll all remember those games because they were big games. You know, he would go crazy, a couple touchdowns. When he went big, he went big. But then he also disappeared in week 16 and 17, and Ramondre went big. So just an interesting, I wanted to bring up, not that they were disappointing because I don't know if anybody, it was just such a roller coaster for basically TreVeyon more than anything because Ramondre just was never given any love. And then the last 5 games and now heading into the playoffs for New England, all of a sudden he's just a man possessed. Now I get it. He's playing for a full-time job, but he has another 3 years left. But I feel like Ramondre could be a nice value heading into next year while everybody is going for the shiny new toy up here with TreVeyon. Could be some interesting stuff. Definitely worth keeping an eye on as we look at, those, if you go heavy wide receiver at the beginning of the drafts, who's those running backs that you might be able to grab later that can help you fill out. I think Ramondre may be that guy. So, what are your thoughts on those two? It was an interesting year for both. I don't think anybody expected what we saw out of Stevenson in those last 5 games for sure.
Well, I feel like it's kind of what we saw with like John Harbaugh again. Mike Vrabel's going to want to run the football, so I think there's going to be enough there. I just feel like with my own luck in those types of situations, I'm going to get one of those guys, and I'm going to start him 1 week, and he's going to do nothing, and then I'm going to sit him, and he's not. He's going to go off. I can never seem to figure those situations out, so I think for my own purposes, I'm probably going to stay out of it. But I think there could be enough on the bone there, and like you said, Stevenson is around for 4 years, and they're paying him, a decent salary, so he's going to get the football. But I think, like you said too, it's going to be at a discounted rate, which might work out for you.
Yeah, I could see a scenario, especially like at a Kings Classic League, where you have those multiple flexes. You draft TreVeyon as your RB2, and then grab Ramondre round 7, round 8 as your flex. Because I did that in one league. I had Walker and Charbonnet. And so, I was playing them, and when they were playing well together, and they were doing both earning clutch games, it was great, but then they started falling apart, and it really messed up my season. But, James, I think you were going to say something too.
Yeah. I think the craziest thing about it, and the one thing that stands out to me about Trevion and that whole group of what they did there, is people forget that it took Antonio Gibson going to IR and then Terrell Jennings, who was getting run ahead of Henderson earlier in the year, to go on IR before Henderson really started getting touches and doing stuff. And that was with Ramondre Stevenson, I think, coming into that game with 5 fumbles in the last 3 games or something.
Right. And Ramondre missed 2 games due to injury too, and I think he filled in those. Yeah.
It's one of those weird oddities where you have to look back on it. And Henderson was like the last guy standing. And I don't know what it is behind the curtain that he was doing in New England that they didn't like, but there was something there that they didn't like because, like I said, Jennings got carries.
I feel like Trevion was not good at pass pro, and I think that's part of it.
I think Vrabel must have seen something every day in practice that he's like, I don't want to see that on film tape, on game tape, you know? Right. So, yeah.
Anyway, so that's my number 2 guy. So, gentlemen, let's James, we'll go to you. What is your third hated player?
Third hated running back this year was a guy that I reached out for, and I really thought a change of scenery going to a good team is what I thought in my mind. It's Jordan Mason for the Vikings. I knew that Aaron Jones was getting a little bit older. I think there was a lot of speculation that maybe he was going to divert more into a pass down back. I liked what I saw in limited touches for Mason, and when he did take over for Christian McCaffrey when he went down with the 49ers, I was like, this is a guy that you might be able to sneakily get at the end of the draft, that this Vikings team is going to be good. They're going to get goal line touches. They're going to do all that. I wasn't quite aware of the fact that Sam Darnold was a superstar quarterback and J.J. McCarthy was the exact opposite of that, to where I would hope Carson Wentz came back later in the season. But that turned into an insanity thing. He ended up with a 38% consistency rate. Mason did. You never knew when to start him. I think he was RB45 at 8.1 points per game. So he had a couple of decent little games, but for the most part, he was sprinkling 5 and 6 points here and there. And I think, like I said, a lot of that had to do with their incompetent quarterback play. Aaron Jones isn't getting any younger. Maybe Mason could look better next year, but I have no idea what their quarterback room is going to look like. I mean, at the beginning of the year, you have to think that the Vikings thought to themselves, look at what Daniel Jones is doing. Look what Sam Darnold is doing. Look what these guys are doing that we let go. And we were a 14-win team last year, and now, they were struggling to complete games at the end of the season. So it was a dumpster fire, and Mason was a part of that, who just didn't get a lot of love, couldn't get a lot of good touches down towards the end, and just never got it going,
Yeah. Ron, instead of you going, I'm going to go, because guess who my last guy was? Aaron Jones. I had so much faith that he wasn't done. I really did, because he had if you remember, he was like 80% consistent the year before for the Vikings, and I thought, yep, Jordan Mason's there, but I get it. They need a solid backup. Fine. But, yeah, he missed a bunch of games with injuries. Hey, weeks 16 and 17, and for some reason you got to play him on your playoff team. He was great then. But, yeah, like you said, it just wasn't there for him. 50% consistent, 41st in total points. But he was a guy that I put too much faith in, and I should have known better. But on the other hand, Josh Jacobs was like, they were back to back, I think, in 2024. And I'm like, Josh Jacobs, Aaron Jones, yeah, they're pretty much same age, everything's great. And Jacobs ends up going 80% consistent, and Aaron Jones did not. So I'm right there with you with that pitiful backfield. Yeah. So Ron, we'll finish it with you, brother.
So a guy that I kind of had a love-hate relationship with, a guy that I traded for right after the hot streak. I got a couple of clutch games out of him. Guy that's also a free agent, so it'll be interesting to see where he goes, and that's Rico Dowdle. And again, Rico Dowdle was the guy that put up one of the biggest games of the season, 206 yards. Followed it up with 183. But then when you needed him down the stretch, when you needed those playoff runs, he's going 9 for 29. He's going 7 for 10. He's going 5 for 9. Now I get it. Chuba Hubbard came back, and it was more of a timeshare. But initially, when Chuba Hubbard came back, it was still Dowdle that was the guy. Dowdle was still getting the lion's share of the carries. He was scoring touchdowns. He caught the ball a little bit out of the backfield. But when you needed him, he had those 4 straight clutch games in the middle of the year. He had one more the rest of the way, and ended the year with 3 games where he wasn't clutch. Now, again, if he ends up in the right situation, you just talked about Minnesota. Maybe if they get rid of one of those guys, maybe both of them. I don't know what the contracts look like. But, again, intriguing guy to watch in free agency, only 27 years old, doesn't have another guy that doesn't have a lot of carries under his belt. So, again, a guy that I traded for in my dynasty, I'm hoping for big things out of, but a guy that really, kind of bamboozled me to trade for him. And then all of a sudden when I needed him, he was long gone.
Yeah, no question about it. All right. Well, gentlemen, thank you for your input. Good stuff. I'll let you guys tell everybody where they can find you on the site and what you're still up to. And yeah. James?
Hey, yeah, you can find me on X at JKeezy. Always posting stuff on there and putting some things out. I got some articles coming out. I want to do some end of year consistency things with a few of my articles, like the Under the Radar. So be looking out for that kind of stuff, and just keep an eye out for all the great stuff that keeps coming out here. And like I said, if you didn't watch last week's video, that was an hour. Watch that one. That was fantastic on the quarterbacks. And we'll be back next week with the wide receivers.
Definitely. All right, Ron.
So we're trying to get you that playoff money. We're trying to get you that new money in the new year. So we got the consistently cashing over there. And again, everybody's got all kind of good stuff coming out. We'll have off-season stuff as well. I'm kind of mulling over some things that I want to do in the off-season, but we'll get that going. And again, come over and get that consistency. It's kind of look at the consistency now and see what your team did. See what you can learn from. You always learn from those mistakes, right? So last but not least, I want to finish up. Got a couple cards this week because my Twitter was blowing up. I didn't show any cards last week. Yeah. Consistency Nation was not happy with me over that. So I got 2 this week. So number 1, I had to get this guy. I know I didn't have any of him. He put up a clutch game in his start. That's Mr. Riley Leonard. Could be our guy next year. Who knows? And it's weird that you said this guy's name. Mr. Mike Allstott. This gentleman just added this one, kind of a cool one. And I want to add on there my amazing wife this Saturday, get a little meet and greet with Mike Allstott, get a photo and an autograph. Yeah, so that's going to be super cool. So thought I'd put him on there as well. Awesome. It's going to be a good time. Yeah, so
invite him to everything. Hey, invite him to the expo.
I'll see what I can do. I'll see what he's doing. I'll see what he's got any plans.
Tell him July 24th to 26th. Let's talk.
Okay.
If he doesn't charge a fortune, let's get him to come in. I think it'd be a blast.
All right.
Oh, yeah.
As always, you can find me on Twitter at Bob_Lung. And hey, if you followed my prop bets this week, 4-0, baby, 4-0. And I did them all at a plus 660. But the sad part is I only had $2 left in my account.
Oh no.
That's how it works. That's
so I got $13 now.
But hey, because I'm teaching my students. We were talking about stocks today, and I was talking about percent of your return. So think about the percent that you got there. That's really
impressive. I know. Think about that one. It's 600%, man. Good stuff. But damn, now there have been the time when I could have put 20 down and won 130, but no. And I was like, I'll just throw $2 on this, and nailed them all. Over under for Corum, over under for Hubbard. Under for Trevor Lawrence and passing yards, and over for forget. I think it was another running back. Nah, maybe not. I don't remember. But anyway, Colby was 1 for 3, but because he always bets on those damn Texans. It's got to stop. You can't have over 70 yards against Pittsburgh in January. Come on, Colby. Even I knew that one. Anyway, we love you, bro. All right. So for James, for Ron, I'm Bob Lung. Everybody take care. Next week, we'll have the wide receivers. So God bless. Have a great week. We'll see you soon.
Take it easy.